Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the workshop. I'm Tegan, founder of Channel Consulting, and I am so energized and excited to have you joining us today. Welcome to the workshop. The reason for this workshop is the housing crisis. We all have a role in doing something about it. The work of Channel Consulting is land development and permitting, and we facilitate the permitting process for developers, government organizations, and nonprofit groups. As we get started, I invite you to please share in the chat who here is from a development organization, who here is from a government organization, who's representing a service provider. Please share in the chat what brings you to the workshop. Each of us doing what we can to help with the housing problem, that is accountability. And that accountability is where it happens. So to that end, a huge focus for us at Channel Consulting is opening up these opportunities like this workshop for the exchange of ideas and diverse perspectives. It's never been more important to bring together diverse stakeholders to talk about difficult topics like permitting. And Ryan and I certainly align on that. As you know, Canada is short 5.8 million homes in the next 7 years to keep pace with demand. That's an entire city of Toronto. And here's the kicker. The cost to put the infrastructure in place for one new housing unit is $107,000. So the infrastructure crisis is essentially pouring gasoline on the housing crisis. And those infrastructure costs show up in DCCs and city fees. And so the degree of certainty that we have on those costs and also on those timelines drives whether projects are viable or not. So the stakes couldn't be higher. At Channel Consulting, we aren't just talking about the problem. We're here to actually re-inspire our colleagues in the industry and be part of the solution. 2025 is about feeling the fear and doing it anyway. We absolutely cannot shy from doing the real work to address the housing problem. We're on a mission to accelerate permitting, unlock housing where we can. Our goal is getting things done faster, smarter, and more effectively. So at Channel Consulting, we have 4 dynamic services that move the needle on permitting. One that probably everyone knows about is our development feasibility assessments that leverage our proprietary framework to assess development potential of land. 2 is our development approval process review. That is a specific framework that we have for helping government organizations to improve how they do permitting. The third one is our Approval Accelerator Mentoring Program. This is a very popular 90-day coaching program for leaders who are really ready to roll up their sleeves, make some decisions, and accelerate permitting. And fourth, for teams that are serious about speed, we offer VIP half-day sessions. We've got spots in Toronto, March 10th to 12th, and in Vancouver, March 13th to 21st. And I can guarantee you the VIP sessions are going to disappear. So if you want this for your team, you could reach out to Desiree or I actually today. So before we dive in, I just want to take a quick moment along that vein to say a heartfelt thank you to our incredible clients. Without our clients, these free sessions would not be possible. So now you didn't come here to hear from me, you came here for Ryan Smith, one of Canada's brightest minds in permitting process improvement. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome you, Ryan, from the city of Kelowna. Ryan will share specific insights on how we can all accelerate permitting in our respective roles, whether you're in a municipality, whether you're an applicant, or whether you're a service provider. After Ryan's presentation, we'll open the floor for Q&A. We'll keep it packed with information, and as always, we'll aim to wrap up in less than an hour. So without further ado, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Tegan. I always really enjoy talking about permitting. Obviously, I'll throw my presentation up and share this. My presentation today really focuses on Kelowna's experiences, and I'll throw in some personal experiences. I got about 20 minutes here, and I'm sure I can fill that, and I'm excited for questions and discussion afterwards. So I'll jump right into it here. Why am I not? There we go. So a little quick context. You probably heard it, but if not, we're one of Canada's fastest growing cities in Kelowna. We have been working to streamline and simplify our processes for many, many years. We did our first process review in 2006-07. I led a subsequent one in 2012, 2013 for the city of Kelowna. And then we also participated behind the scenes in the provincial government's development application process review document that was delivered in 2019. Some of the recent work we've done was supported by BC government grants. We got a grant for an infill housing fast track process and an AI chatbot tool to help speed up the housing process. And while we got a grant for the tool to create a tool at the time, we had no idea what that tool was going to be. So we kind of dreamed something up and then thought, we're not sure how we're going to deliver it, but we'll do our best. So I think we had some success there that I'll tell you a little bit about too. Yeah, moving on. This is a soccer themed presentation because there's some parallels between that I was able to draw between my youth soccer coaching woes or background and development processes that and bureaucracies that are successful and those that aren't successful. So our goal here is to deliver services through our development process with as few touches as possible. And in soccer, maybe it's a little bit different because the more you have the ball, the less chance you have to get scored on. So maybe more touches are better. But at I think that the easiest way to think of it is we're trying to score goals in Kelowna, but not have the ball very much. And yeah, little counterintuitive. And we're using a bunch of different tools to do that here. So our AI chatbot that I first talked about, what we found with when you go into a city hall and you want to ask development services questions, you get a front counter person who's a generalist, and they tend to answer the same questions over and over and over, maybe in different ways. And what we wanted to do is start to free those people up to do higher value work. So first, it was help customers make applications as well, help staff understand compliance, and then get some better data. So I'm going to touch on all of those things today. What that chatbot looked like is you can start to dig into our bylaws, whether you're on the outside and using it through our website or our own internal staff, and ask our chatbots about different sections of our zoning bylaw, for instance, and have that chatbot give you that information back and related sections in the bylaw. Zoning bylaws in cities are hundreds, if not thousands of pages long and have references that are, obscure in different places. And it's really hard to meet them all if you're a newcomer. So we're trying to one of the goals was to simplify the access to information about our development processes. So, what that looks like is when we're looking at, from a high level, our development processes and our permitting processes in Kelowna, we split them into three. So the first is the pre-application process. And that's where we see chatbots having the most value is in that pre-application process. So easy access to the regulations. And we're still working on a component that helps sort of mom and pop builders understand how do we finance it and who can build it for us. We were hoping that would be completed sooner, but it's something that's taken a little bit more time. And I can maybe talk about that in the conversation afterwards. In the application process, we're using new application software to accept and make sure that applications are complete before they come in the door, and then create seamless transitions to staff. I've often seen applications sit on the back counter in City Hall for a week while someone, someone has to wait to set them up. They don't get set up right away or assigned right away to planners. And so with our new, some of our new software, that setup and the assignment of files is happening much quicker, leading to faster time to get into a building plan checker's hands, faster pass off to a building inspector, those types of things. That application process, we're also designing to help give a better idea of housing options and better technical support. And the better technical support will probably be, and has shown to be so far, where we can free up other resources in order to redeploy them to provide better customer service. And finally, the inspections and compliance into the process, where we're working with risk-based photo inspections. We started that during COVID with some success. Then also city-led streetscape improvements and street frontage improvements. We're trying to make sure that the burden on new construction doesn't include a ton of civil offsite work if possible, and that the city takes on that part of the process longer term, and we can deliver a consistently better product in terms of our streetscape improvements in areas that are growing the fastest in the city. So when I'm trying to describe this, I see sometimes like soccer goals. This is a 31 pass soccer goal. And sometimes if you come to City Hall and you're trying to work through our development process, you end up with, 31 different people. And I've heard developers who are exasperated. They had 3 different planners. They had 2 different building inspectors, a plumbing inspector, a fire inspector. And what we're trying to do is reduce the number of touches by combining areas of responsibility at the city. And so you might not, it may be still there behind the scenes, but as a customer, you see less of those pass offs. So right now, or not right now, like probably 5 years ago in Kelowna, 8 years ago in Kelowna, you had, a rezoning to building permit take 6 to 18 months. And actually that wasn't too bad then compared to other places. That wasn't good enough here. And what we were looking at was, could you do a rezoning for a 4 to 6 plex could the process take 5 to 10 days? And this actually predated last year's Bill 44. And so we did a bunch of pre-zoning and a pilot project and some fast track designs. And we found a way to cut down the approval times for pre-approved designs for fourplexes and building permits for those pre-approved designs to between 5 and 10 days. So what would have taken 6 to 18 months before, we condensed into 2 weeks, which was a big step and something that we talked with the BC government a lot about when they were designing Bill 44. And so what that looks like to us is kind of a new playbook that we're opening here. And I kind of look at it like David Beckham, and he scored this super famous goal and from the halfway line. So very few passes to get that goal. And in order to achieve that 5 to 10 days, there's fewer pass offs and less steps in the process. So that pre-zoning we not only did before Bill 44 as a pilot project, we also went in and pre-zoned all of our urban centers in Kelowna for the types of development that we want to see in the future. And we've been leading the province in that effect for a little while now. What that looked like with our infill housing fast track, we kind of call that practice. We had quite a bit of success with our round 1 launch. These are all built examples of 4-unit housing in the community, infill housing, and that happened in a pretty quick timeline. And my brother actually lives in one of these now in Kelowna, which is kind of cool. And they all happened, again, a quick timeline, predictable timeline, and it was because we used pre-approved designs. So we wanted to build on that success. So part of the grant that we got from BC government in 2019 also was used towards creating an updated infill housing sort of phase 2 process. And our phase 1, we pre-zoned 900 lots in Kelowna that all had lane access. And our next question was, could we do way more than that? Could we pre-zone way more than that, lots without lane access? And what would that look like? And can we find or have pre-approved designs created for those as well? And I have a little Ted Lasso scene here. And one of the things I say to my staff constantly is, we've done a lot, but we can't hit snooze. This is a housing crisis. We're not in a panic either, but we're certainly not hitting snooze. So we've done a lot, but we have more to go. And I'm not happy until the processes are all short, tight, documented here, and there's a really good reason for them. And that led to our round 2. So the lots that we pre-zoned in our round 2, which was roughly aligned just before Bill 44, were thousands of single-family lots in Kelowna that did not have lane access. And so we're basically building four-unit buildings on infill properties in Kelowna that are a little bit more complicated, and bringing in the pre-approved design again to the mix, which really helps speed up in our experience housing delivery and housing permitting timelines. So here we see with these pre-approved designs, what changes? Oftentimes just the siding. And so that's how you get your architecture variability. I hear constantly from planners that they're all going to look the same. But the reality is they don't. Nobody wants their house to look exactly the same as the house down the street, but they do look different if you change up the materiality in them. One of the other components that is starting to sneak into the discussion and actually deserves a whole lot more attention in British Columbia and across Canada is manufactured housing, and whether that's components of housing or whole homes. One of these designs that we have in our phase 2 pilot project for infill housing is a prefabricated housing option from a company here in Kelowna, and we've had that option on the books now for a year, and we've had a couple permits go through for those, I believe. And I think success for us would be if we approve about our 44 infill housing developments a year. I would say if 10 of those 44, 5 years from now, were prefabricated, that would be success in my mind. That would be about 25% of those housing units. Long term, I think our housing needs assessment says we need between 1,800 and 2,600 new units a year. If 15 to 20% of those were done in modular formats or with strong components of modular housing in the next 5 years, again, I think that would be a real success story. So back to applying online and checking eligibility. One of the things that we used our chatbot for, again, this is in the pre-application stage of the process, is your property eligible for infill? So we have a chatbot that can help you figure out if your property is eligible for infill and what fast track designs are available. This little robot, we used to call our AI projects like our just AI chatbot. And one of our staff members didn't really understand what was going on. And he thought we were talking about a guy named Al Chabot. And so we actually figured there was some confusion there, being on the leading edge of AI use in local government. And so we called the chatbot Al Chabot for a little while, but then we finally named the chatbot Kai, which stands for Kelowna AI. So that's little Kai there. So again, the goal is faster permitting, and what we're using are digital permitting and AI chatbots, process streamlining and fast tracks. We're pushing and advocating for manufactured housing and housing components and the pre-approved designs. So that in our mind is the big goal and the winning formula, and that's what we're going to keep pushing here in Kelowna. And so Kai's player stats we do track in our chatbots. And so we have a whole bunch of chatbots that give different information about different aspects of our processes. And you can see them, they're listed with the colored dots down the right-hand side of the chart there. And that's not all of the ones that we run, but a number of them. So we have an IT team monitoring the questions that come into those chatbots. And we're looking at, when are people using the chatbots the most? At what times of day are people using the chatbots the most? And so these are people using chatbots inside work hours and outside work hours, for instance, and trying to figure out, again, if our chatbots weren't being used outside of work hours, I wonder why they weren't being used outside of work hours. For example, in terms of, we're trying to create a city hall here that is open for business 24 hours a day. And, is there something that we can do to those chatbots? Maybe we need to do more engagement with the construction community to ask them why they wouldn't be using them at that time if and when City Hall's not open. So in terms of our track record in Kelowna, I think that results definitely matter. And what are the results that are showing that what we're doing here is working? we were just reported on the first 6 months of housing targets, and we achieved our year one housing targets in the first 6 months of occupancies. And since we were designated as a Housing Supply Act community, we have a reputation across the country for being having predictable and efficient processes. And our vacancy rate for purpose-built rentals just hit a 20-year high in Kelowna. And we're really proud of that. We've cobbled together a whole suite of different incentives to help purpose-built rental housing happen in Kelowna. And that's delivered not just hundreds of purpose-built rental units, but thousands. And this year should be our biggest year ever for completions on purpose-built rental buildings. And we will expect to see our vacancy rate to pop up close to 5% when it gets reported on this fall. Challenges. It's not always good news. And I would say the challenges are the expectations now that get created. Obviously, in a housing crisis, we have a reputation for predictable permitting, but I think the development community expects us to do everything fast all the time. And for really complicated development, sometimes that's just not possible. And so managing expectations is something that I do constantly, and also trying to find solutions when challenges come up. Connecting unsophisticated property owners with their options, which are like financing and who's going to build it. If we're going to unlock the potential of infill housing in our cities across BC, we really need to find better ways to connect property owners with their options and the ability to sort of engage in processes to add units on properties. It's not just any one type of unit. The future is not just 4 to 6 story buildings. It's not just high rises. It probably lies more than anything in terms of affordable housing in a long-term property owner's ability to unlock their property and add more, so that more multi-generational living options or wealth creation is possible. And then the long-term sustainable infrastructure finance. Tegan mentioned that in her introduction today. And I'd say this is the most massive piece of the puzzle, is that long-term sustainable infrastructure challenge. We constantly hear in our community, and I hear it all over BC and all over Canada, is the cities are growing faster than our infrastructure can keep pace with. And I think that's true. And I think that all levels of government need to have more meaningful discussion about how we're going to tackle that and how we're going to connect growth and infrastructure in a more meaningful way. Because right now, it's a shame that it's very political in nature. So right now we have an NDP government in British Columbia, and who I'd say we have a great relationship with, but we have conservative MLAs in Kelowna, which again, they work hard for our community, but likely means, because a lot of that infrastructure money that comes out is political, that maybe we don't get the same consideration as municipalities that are strongholds of the government in power. So, I mean, that's just a reality of that business. But is there a model that sees infrastructure funding linked to growth and communities that deliver housing that's aligned with housing needs in a sort of a predictable way year over year over year? I think that that should be considered in infrastructure financing models and grant models in Canada. So there we have it from me. I will unshare here and open it up to questions with Tegan and discussion.
Wonderful. So Des, if you could put us both on the screen here. Everyone, we certainly welcome you to add your questions into the chat. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just kick off with a question for you, Ryan, that I'm hearing actually from one of the attendees today. Had a great conversation with them earlier. And the question was really about how much you're collaborating with other municipalities in BC and in the Lower Mainland. And also how what you're doing is the same and different. For example, Josh White did a presentation at UDI on Thursday. And actually, Des, maybe you could just throw the link to the news media on that, where he was talking about a lot of things that the City of Vancouver is doing based on listening that they're doing with the development community and some really intentional levers that they're pulling around permitting. How much are you talking with, City of Vancouver, Coquitlam, Burnaby, Surrey, those colleagues of yours that are also really actively working on their permitting processes? And how does what you're doing, how is it the same and different from what you understand?
Yeah, I think many of us are doing similar sort of undertaking similar initiatives in the permitting world. I think that, and I wouldn't, a big shout out to the teams in the sort of Ministry of Housing who did sort of the heavy lifting and housing work last year. There's lots of opinions on whether it was right or wrong that government step in and on the municipal housing front and take away or change powers. But it made us more similar in terms of our processes. And so I would say that is Kelowna, we've been engaging, we're a sort of a entrepreneurial city that has little tolerance for bureaucracy. And so while lots of cities are engaging in development process reviews today, or started over the last 3 or 4 years, these are things that we were doing, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And we've gone through a lot of those sort of challenges and processes to streamline, which is great. And it's something that it's not maybe a humble brag. It was nice to be part of that and learn from that. And a lot of the things we're doing now, we're tweaking around the edges or dedicating our time to figuring out how to unlock housing on the tougher sites. So we've done the heavy lifting in our urban centers to make it easier to develop housing. We've done the heavy lifting in infill contexts. We've got a lot of suburban land that is building out. We're working with developers in the suburban areas to see if we can, intensify any of those or add services that will allow intensification around. I would say most of our challenges again are more, I think the infrastructure side, and how do we provide infrastructure for faster growth than we'd anticipated before? Now, what do our road networks look like? And we're looking at other cities, and I think they're looking at us as well. I'll give a good example. We've done a whole bunch of sessions with Vancouver, New Westminster, Burnaby, Coquitlam over the last few years during the sort of lead up to Bill 44 and since the implementation, just chit-chatting about like common challenges. So I'd say there's lots of information for municipalities, but I think one of the challenges I see, we're all still doing different things on sort of the tech front. So some use chatbots, some don't. We're all using different electronic application systems to submit a rezoning or a development permit or a building permit. And you can't tell me that we're all so different that that's necessary.
Yeah.
And so that takes away the consistency, I think the consistency of process. And so I mean, there's no reason. And I mean, the other aspect of that is small cities can't afford some of those things either, or don't have the technological expertise. And so, I mean, I think that's, you know, at some point we need to start thinking about, do we centralize a lot of this?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that maybe we missed that opportunity over the last 3 years, unfortunately. And there was just, you know, too many different cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Like in the Lower Mainland. So my personal view is that in the Lower Mainland we have, a couple of hundred council members. It's a very difficult job. We have a very shallow talent pool for elected officials, and we also have these very diverse permitting systems. And so, the time to do an amalgamation probably would have been at the time that Bill 44, 46, and 47 went through. That would have been awesome, in my view. But yeah, exactly what you're saying. We're going to end up with another patchwork quilt where people are going to have to know how to apply in different jurisdictions across the province, which is unfortunate. But I mean, yeah, here we are. Okay, Andrew has a great question specifically about Kai. Does Kai help make it easier to find answers to infill zoning specifics, building height, width, setbacks, coverage, parking, et cetera, et cetera?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what Kai is meant to do. Is what do you need to know? Everything you need to know to build an infill unit. You can ask Kai those questions, and should be able to get answers to those questions. And if you're not getting answers, it'll kick you out to and give you the ability to talk to a person.
Okay, great. I was going to ask that question too, because we've all had this experience of chatbots where you're just not getting what you want, right? So you have that seamless integrated system where folks can connect with a real person.
Yeah,
And
you should be able to connect with a real person. But
okay,
I go back to, there's occasionally we hear frustration that,
yeah,
someone didn't pick up their phone, or the person, when you go back to the pass offs, like the soccer passes, the person, it went to someone who wasn't the right person, just the way our internal phone system works. We don't have a call center that handles those. And so it the way it works is there's a few designated people, but it bounces from person to person until it gets somebody. But that person may or may not have an expertise in that area and may have to go find it. But in those cases, we do train Kai. If we think that Kai should be able to answer that question, we get the right answer in there. And so that doesn't happen again.
okay, awesome. Now I have another question. Before I ask it, I'm just going to invite all of you who are attending to please put any question in the chat. Every question is a good question. Every question is the right question. My question is about complex sites. There are very few easy sites left, and I'm sure in Kelowna you're seeing that more and more. You mentioned the suburban building opportunities, but you do have those really complex infill sites. What are you guys doing in terms of maybe having a facilitator role or something of that nature, where you have a central point of contact who's coordinating all of the stakeholders, the different departments, the conversations to enable some of these difficult sites to proceed?
So in Kelowna, we have a model we call the strong planner model. And so the role of the planner is to bring all of that information together and review it and pinpoint conflicts. And for minor conflicts between the planner and the planning manager, they're expected to have a look and knowing what our OCP priorities are, council priorities are, and they should be able to make a decision on that. For more major compromises or major challenges, competing interests, we have a dispute resolution process that we actually haven't used in the last few years, but we're just about to dust off and bring back just more complex challenges right now, and you have more difficult sites. And so there'd be an escalation of that and a timeline for review at more senior management levels, and then a decision. And that could be from staff or from like an internal staff disagreement or with a developer on the outside. But we try and make sure that we don't send a developer conflicting requirements. It does happen every now and then where the planner just didn't know that two things were at odds. But yeah, where there are conflicting requirements, those need to get sorted out. And I guess I say to my team constantly, if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. And we see that all across the housing system right now, where we're unable to compromise because we can't compromise anything else to put housing first. And I would say that to my teams, I think that housing comes first, and direct infrastructure supports for housing come first. But the, in terms of like the sidewalk connections, those types of things, but there's lots of things that, may or may not have to be compromised. And, if we don't have enough room for the street trees, do we spend a whole bunch of extra time and delay things to buy more land to get street trees? Or do we let it go without the street trees, knowing that, we can make up for it somewhere else? What's the trade-off there? And those discussions need to happen. And I would say most of the time, we come to a compromise and a solution. But yeah, I've got a couple on my plate right now that should be simple, but the competing interests make it super challenging, and no one wants to compromise.
Absolutely. So this is a really important point around the role of people versus technology, right? So we can leverage technology like a lot, which is awesome, and you're doing that, and you will continue to do that. But there's always going to be this role for people, right? In terms of critical thinking and decision making. And in municipalities, and I'm not going to point fingers at any municipalities in the Lower Mainland, but we can find ourselves working within a culture that can be toxic around power dynamics and so forth. So when you say that you have not had to leverage your dispute resolution framework, I just want to give you a lot of kudos and say that's a culture that you've created that is empowered decision making, which is really awesome. And so a question for you would be, is there something specific that you've done to train your strong planners and to train your landscape architects, your engineers around how that dynamic works? Like what's your secret?
Yeah, I think it's constantly going back to the basics. And so governments all see ourselves, like especially in the planning and development world, as regulators. And so we're here to enforce the rules, and staff are taught that really early. When you first walk in the door as a junior planner, you're given the zoning bylaw, you review your first permit, and you try and make sure that the setbacks match and the building height matches, and that you understand the definition of building height, which is confusing everywhere you go in every single municipality because no one can measure it the same, even though the hills are the same all over BC. So yeah, I mean, I think that the secret sauce is probably the expressing the expectation openly and often that we're also facilitators.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we've been doing that for a long time, and then finding examples to go back on where we've done something to facilitate a project moving forward, and what that was. And did we have to make a compromise to do that? Did we have to, interpret a rule, in a really sort of loose way? And then, whatever compromise, whatever we had to do to get there, if it made sense, we should be doing it for everybody. So let's change the bylaw. So there's lots of municipalities in BC that don't treat their zoning bylaw or official community plans as living documents. And we treat ours as a living document. We update, 2 or 3, 4 times a year, the zoning bylaw, the OCP, we tweak constantly as well. The city is a living place, and our sort of policy and regulatory guidance should be living as well, in my mind. And we constantly hear from residents that say, oh, well, the rule is, but they never understand why the rule was created in the first place. And if you don't understand why the rule was created, like why were we enforcing rules that we don't understand either? But we do it kind of blindly. So that in the facilitation mindset, it's like question the rule, question the result if we ignore the rule, or if we bend the rule, or if we get rid of the rule. Like those are the types of sort of thoughts we want in debates we want to have. And I don't mind staff disagreeing. If you're disagreeing
Right.
on like in the facilitation world, like the questioning why, where you're arguing entrenched positions, then that becomes toxic is what really bothers me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I love it. I love this culture around
Yeah.
critical thinking that you've created, that your whole team has created, and that everyone is
Yeah, and
continuing.
it does take a whole team, and I mean
Yeah.
it comes from the top in our organization,
Yeah.
and
Sure.
yeah, but I would say it's not something that you know, you can't just talk about it and then leave it. It has to be constant. I would say it ebbs and flows here, like anywhere on the culture, and it takes constant effort and constant reference, and whether it's one-on-one or whether it's whole team, we talk about it all the time.
Awesome. That's honestly, that's probably one of the biggest things you could contribute in across the province. There's a huge opportunity for leadership development.
Yeah.
They go along with the permitting process improvements.
Yeah, I think that probably starts in universities and school too. I don't think
Sure.
I think that and I do a lot of coaching and training for different
Yeah.
like functions of local government. But I think, the foundations of development planning, I think is poorly taught and understood and could really use some better support.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think that's a huge opportunity. Um, okay, so I have another question, but folks, add your questions in the chat, please. We want to hear your questions. I loved what you said about connecting property owners with financing and builders. I thought that was fascinating because you wouldn't believe how many phone calls I get about multiplex constantly. And they are from a lot of families and a lot of generational
Mhm.
families. So there's a lot of families that are looking for that, particularly south of Fraser, etc. And so I'd love to know what ideas you have about how to connect those property owners with financing and builders.
Yeah, so one of the ideas that we've been talking about, and it's sort of an offshoot of our Kai infill chatbot, is Kai asking people who have specific info questions if they know how they're going to finance it, and what do they want some options. And we've been talking to a couple of different credit unions about, what are your options? Can we connect people to a landing page that gives them options? And we ran into some
Interesting.
just challenges with like assistance to business and
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean we're not going to do it. And then the extension to that was the who's going to build it. And so we have a good relationship with our local chapter of the Canadian Home Builders, and we've been talking to them about a landing page that gives again access through our chatbot that really gives a good idea of what builders are able to build that type of housing in the central Okanagan, and what their timelines might be. So when do they have capacity? When do they have capacity to start? And how do you get a quote from them? How do you get in touch with them? So two components that haven't come together quite yet, but that are still on our radar, and we'd like to sort of combine over the next little while. And the financing bit might be sooner. The home builders bit again, it could be sometime this year. It's just probably partly a person power issue here too, where we're trying with housing accelerator money, we're trying to deliver on those projects and the tech projects everything at the same time. And nobody has the time right now. Planners are on the implementation side are sort of a precious commodity right now in BC.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So, I don't want to keep people for longer than we need to, but is there any final questions from attendees? Okay. Oh, great. Andrew, Kelowna had several fires a few summers ago. Do you have any development programs for areas that might be in high forest danger areas?
We do. There's two things that happen when new development happens in fire interface areas. So developers have to um, do some mitigation work in the forests surrounding their subdivisions to bring the risk from a high hazard risk or a extreme hazard risk to a moderate risk. And when the fire jumped Okanagan Lake 2 summers ago and spread into Kelowna, it actually spread into a newer neighborhood that had that fuel modification done. And our if it had been into an old neighborhood, it would have been disastrous. But our fire department, because of that fuel modification that was done in that neighborhood, was able to actually really control the fire quite well. The fire stayed on the ground. It didn't burn into the trees. There wasn't a lot of fuel for it to consume. It was just basically burning on grass. And so it was, it could have been terrible. But one thing that we're doing beyond that now is we're starting a controlled burn program. And so that, like an urban controlled burn program in some of our high hazard areas. And so we actually just took that to council yesterday, our urban forestry team and our fire department. And so they're looking for a window either in the next like 3 or 4 weeks or in the fall to do some controlled burning starting in some high hazard areas that the city owns. But that program, may go further than that in the future.
Super interesting, and of course that will be interesting
very
to many jurisdictions globally.
Definitely.
I'm actually getting involved in some global initiatives with LAI, so I'd love to talk to you about that another time.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so everyone, thank you so much for coming. Ryan, thank you for an excellent presentation. Always a pleasure to chat with you. I'm so proud of the work that you're doing and grateful on behalf as a Canadian. I'm just so grateful that there's people like you who are helping to really solve and address the housing crisis in a meaningful way and exceeding your housing targets. So thank you. Des has put a feedback form in the chat. We live on feedback. We'd love to know how this session was for you, what other types of sessions you would like from Channel Consulting as part of our 2025 learning series. So please share your feedback with us. And thank you all so much again. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everyone.